Hi, Dr. Rob.
Good evening, Tammy. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. I love your sunset background today. So
That is the sky as they see it right now. It's true.
it's dark here, so I'm already past that. So,
Well,
okay.
we're in different time zones. It's
Yes,
about
we
right.
are. Yes, we are.
But
So
the truth is in every time zone.
that is absolutely true. And some people will be joining us watching this that after it's recorded. So wherever they are, it's good that they're watching.
And people will be watching and engaging us from China and Hong Kong and New York. And it's really cool that we come together like this. So, on to questions.
The question we have one so far, so we hope other people join
That's
in.
our people will show.
It has been 9 months since my husband's disclosing his addiction. We are finally going through a disclosure this Friday. While I have a plan with my therapist, all of a sudden I realize everyone in that room will know what happened in my relationship prior to the disclosure except me. I feel exposed and on display. I want to feel emotionally safer. How do I do this?
Well, one thing I think is really important for, first of all, I think what you're feeling is really normal, and I understand it completely. And anybody facing some information that they're not, it's sort of like going to the doctor and finding out if you have cancer. It's terrifying. And so I can completely understand that you would be anyone would be having trouble getting themselves together for this kind of an appointment, one that they never wanted to have in the first place, right? So, but what Tammy and I often encourage, and I really think is very important, is for you to have a plan for, what are you going to do that morning? What are you going to do that afternoon? What are you going to do that evening? And it probably should involve your spouse. So, maybe you're going to spend an evening with family, or you're going to go to church, or you're going to spend time with a friend and their kids, or, it would be good for you to focus now, not as much on what you don't know about. In other words, what you can't control, what's going to happen in that room, but you can control how you're going to spend your time, who you're going to reach out to, and how you're going to nurture yourself after this. You can decide, whatever comes out, I don't think you should come home tonight, or, or I want some friends staying with me, or whatever you need now to begin to make yourself safe. But also know that, this is no fun, and it's not going to be a picnic, and you're going to be suffering with this. You already are. And unfortunately, that's part of the deal. Tammy, do you have other
Yeah,
thoughts?
yeah, I do, because yes, all of those things, and you do have a plan and all that. And for some, and everybody does things a little bit differently, but often your therapist doesn't find out a whole lot until right before, so that they really aren't, knowing all of the details, but just kind of know what they need to know in order to support you. So you're doing great in that you sound like you've been doing this like. I hear all the time he told me everything, and so I love that there's a plan and that you're getting support and you've got all that. But the other thing, the reason you're doing this is, yes, you're going to get information and it's going to be no fun and all that, but it also lays the foundation for building on this for yourself and for you as a couple. If you decide to go there, that's a whole another thing. But it takes away all the lies and things that have been told to you, or the things you didn't know about. So it really helps build that foundation. So my experience with people that have done this is they're glad they've done it. It's not fun in the moment, but they really do find that it's helpful after the fact. So totally normal. 100%, honor what you're saying. But I love that you have a supportive therapist there. You've got a plan. So while you may be in the dark on some stuff, you've been in the dark on some stuff. So now you're going to find out.
I wanted to say I'm sorry. I got a little interrupted because as you were sharing, someone wrote in and said, "Hello from Holland." And I thought, okay, that's a beautiful thing when people are getting help all around the world, and you just need to ask, and it doesn't cost you anything. Woohoo! I love that. Let me tell everybody what we're doing, Tammy, in case there are people who don't know. I know you introduced us. Tammy and I do this work every week. We volunteer our time once a week to give answers around sex, love, and addiction issues. I have a lot of years of experience in the field and writing books and doing treatment. Tammy has worked with Dr. Carnes and been in the field a very long time. And we just know stuff. So for us to be able to share some wisdom and information with you is an opportunity to grow and learn more about what's going on out there. So we do run a treatment center, and we encourage you to check it out. It's called Seeking Integrity. But we will always, if you write to Tammy or me, we will refer you to good therapists, to other programs. We're not invested in where you go or what you do, but that you get the best information possible. I also want to say the reason we do this, the reason that I do this, is primarily because I know some of you will never make treatment, never make a therapist, never maybe find your way, but you'll get to ask some expert a question as long as you want to show up here, and we'll do our best to try to guide your way. And I'm actually most supportive of the person who will never get to a therapist, because you're the person that I think needs us the most. So anyway, for all of you, we answer questions. We're not answering your specific, and we are answering your question, but we try to answer it in a general way that applies to everyone. So we're not going to say, well, this is what you should do with your spouse, but in general, this is what people we recommend do. Everything here is anonymous, so nobody can see you. Nobody knows who you are. Nobody knows what your questions are. Tammy reads them. We don't know if it's male or female or any of that. This is done deliberately, anonymously, to support your getting answers without being embarrassed or uncomfortable. But you have to write into the QA and write questions, and Tammy will ask them, and I will answer them. And if you have things you want to comment on, go in the chat. So otherwise, I just end up talking. So Tammy, what are any new questions?
No new questions for the moment. So let's talk about some things. So,
well, I actually have something in mind.
Perfect.
Because I did a podcast with someone today, and I do have a podcast, you guys. It's called Sex, Love, and Addiction. And it really is very good. I've had experts from all over the world who deal with intimacy and sexuality and trauma and abuse and addiction and trust and, you know, all of it. The narrow area of the world that we cover, I think I got a lot of good people doing those. Actually, that's not, that's our support website, Tammy, but I don't know.
It actually is the best way to find the podcast.
Is to go
follow
there.
That link, because then you find all the different platforms. You can see them. They're broken down by those for addicts, those for couples, those for partners. I mean, so yes, if this is your first entry into the podcast, if you're already on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever, great, you got it. But if you haven't, this is the best way to navigate it.
So I was doing a podcast today, and we were talking about the effect of honesty on spouses and all of that. And, you know, it is pretty brutal. It's a really difficult road, and it really involves having a completely new vision of the person you love and being willing to let go of what you had before. It's a really tough one. So we talked a little bit about that. What else did we talk about today's podcast? It was a really good one, Tammy. I wish you'd been there.
I'll listen. I listen to all of them.
Yes, and we're behind, by the way. I have podcasts to do. So you pick a topic, I'll speak to. We have guys, just to say it, for those of you who don't know, therefore a number of guys who are here listening, who are also in our treatment center, and they also ask questions, and hopefully their spouses, if they have them, are here, because this is a great opportunity for spouses to hear the same thing at the same time as you do, you know, so I really encourage that. We were talking about on the podcast today, vulnerability. And part of what I had Jason, I haven't never asked anyone from our treatment environment except you, Tammy, to be on the podcast. But I did ask our spiritual counselor today, Jason, to be on the podcast. And what I wanted him to talk about my goal was what happens in treatment? Like, what is treatment really about in a treatment center? And I know that people probably imagine, and you're right, that we do lectures and we have individual therapy and we have group therapy, and sometimes we have different kinds of therapies with art or other ways of connecting. But that's not really what treatment is about. And I think that's in part what a lot of, I don't want to name shame or blame, but I don't think in America we've done the best job with treatment in the last decade. And it's because a lot of the places that I have encountered or worked with have sort of lost their spirit, if you will. And what I mean is that what treatment is really about, addiction treatment, it's not about any lecture. It's not about any particular therapy. It's not about the things that people learn or don't learn. Those are a given. In other words, I assume that if you go to addiction treatment somewhere, you learn about relapse prevention. You learn about what addiction is and the cycle of addiction. I assume that you will learn what triggers you and how to avoid those triggers. To me, that's just a very basic, you know, C plus B minus given for treatment. But to me, what treatment is all really about is connection. It's about men sitting with each other and realizing that they are sitting amongst people who have similar pain, who have similar issues, who have similar challenges. And that produces an intimacy, in my experience, that some of the men that we work with have never felt, even with the people they love. Because even though I might love my wife or husband dearly and with all of my heart and soul, if I've had secrets from them, then I'm distant from them. And what I mean by intimacy, not talking about sex at all. I think what I'm talking about is when people hit the floor in our treatment center and we start asking them really difficult questions and they start opening up about things they said they would go to their grave with. and they witness other people hearing those things and tolerating those things and saying, hey, brother, that was hard to say. I'm sorry you did that, but I'm pleased you could talk about it. There is an intimacy built among the men that do this work, whether it's in me or others, if they're doing good treatment, that ultimately I believe that good addiction treatment is about bringing people together and having them experience, perhaps for the very first time in their lives, what it's like to be in a healthy family where everyone knows everything about you and they love you anyway, and they guide you in good ways and they challenge you in bad ways, but they don't shame you and they don't eject you and they don't freak out, because that's our job in the treatment center, to hold a space for you guys to feel loved, supported, challenged, and tossed around, but still secure, so that you can say, oh, that's what it's like. And look, hey, if I pour out my heart to these guys and I feel so much closer to them, maybe if I start pouring out my heart to my spouse, maybe I'll be closer to them too. We're teaching men in real time what it's like to build deep, meaningful connections to whomever it is they desire to connect to on whatever level, because we're teaching them to open up with their hearts and be open to what comes back. And that is how intimacy is built. And I would say, and I'm going to stop here, Tammy, one of the great things about the podcast today that I came to is that I really think a lot of what a guy opens up to in treatment is, if he's in a relationship or looking to have one, that's the same process he has to go through with his spouse or his partner or his date, is being known, being honest, taking a risk that you won't like me or you'll judge me, and finding out that the people who want to hang in there, they're going to hang in there. And that is such a miracle for the people I work with. So anyway, I just wanted to say that while I would hope after 25 years, what I do in running treatment and other people that I consider experts are the basics, you know, the education, the learning, the structure, the things, the plan that you leave treatment with. I think the most important thing is that we create an environment where you guys feel loved and challenged and confronted and contained and redirected, but all the time held and supported. It's a shame-free zone with lots of opportunities to feel really crappy about things you've done, and because it's open and honest and real. So anyway, I just wanted to say that because I think good treatment brings people to a place where they begin to learn what it would be like to be a part of a healthy family. And maybe they can bring that home and practice that with their actual family of origin or whoever they're involved with. Tammy, do you have any thoughts about that before we move on?
No, I think that's all really valid. And I hear consistently from the alumni and from spouses, partners, that it's been life-changing in a positive way for them. And that's our goal, is to have this be a foundation from which they can build, but in a life-changing way, you know, where you can move forward without all the shame and the guilt and, you know, that garbage, but also have resources so that, you know, if you're thinking, oh, I'm struggling, you know, we've got you connected. We've helped you connect to healthy choices.
And let me say something about that, Tammy. To those guys who are in our treatment center, it's great because nobody knows who they are and nobody can see them, but I know you guys are there. And some of you I haven't even met yet. This week I'll be in later. But what I want to say to you is, this is the practice of how to live life, what you're doing now, by being honest with us, honest with each other, facing the consequences, going through your feelings, taking it as it is, getting support. All of it is the practice for life. It's not just what we're doing in this time that matters. It's taking all of this connection with you. And I will say, to Tammy's point, and then we need to answer questions, that one of the things that I want to make sure of in treatment is that you stay connected. And so those of you who are in treatment, you will be encouraged to be on an alumni group every single week. I don't care if you're on there the rest of your lives, because we will provide a free space forever, as long as you choose to continue to connect with each other. And I think that's where the heat of the moment is. It's where the healing is in where you found that family. So anyway, Tammy, let's move on to questions.
Sure. If my husband is telling small lies prior to our disclosure, should I be concerned about our larger disclosure process? He receives tons of bank withdrawal notices and continues to deny his account is overdrawn. It is also an account he has used for acting out, but not exclusively. I don't want to beat him up about everything, but not being truthful about our disclosure just seems wrong.
Well, I think it's perfectly fine to beat him up about this. Look, it's one thing if I don't take the garbage out and I say, gosh darn, I forgot to take the garbage out. I said I would and I forgot. You can be a little upset with me. I mean, I meant to take it out, but I did let you down. But if I'm lying to you about how I'm spending money or what I'm doing with my financial accounts, or that's big time red flag. And I don't mean that necessarily means he's acting out. It's just that there's other stuff you don't know and other stuff that's going on that's not going to come out in a disclosure around sex or relationships. So one of the things that I would want to do in this situation is add financial accountability to the disclosure and to the therapy process. Because when addicts are acting out, and I can tell you I am one, we don't always just act out in one way. We play the intensity game with money, with drugs, with affair. I mean, in all kinds of ways. And if one way isn't working, it's kind of like a whack-a-mole, for us emotionally, until we get the kind of help we need, we might just move on to the next one. So, got to get my emotional needs, got to bury my pain somewhere. Oops, I can do it by spending. Oh, I can do it by gambling. So I would encourage, if you have another area that you're concerned there might be addiction present, or the kind of behavior that's leaving him to be less than honest, bring it into the therapy, bring it into the disclosure, bring it to him and say, it doesn't have to beat him up. I mean, I said that in the beginning, I was being silly, but it could be more like, I am simply not comfortable moving forward with this piece of our lives or your life being so unclear. It leaves me feeling anxious about the rest. And I want to feel good about the rest, but we got to clean, you don't have to yell and shout. You can just say what you need and want to feel safe.
And often there's a financial component. You talk about he used that account for acting out. So often with a disclosure, it's, this behavior, it was this behavior this many times, and the financial cost of this was. And so.
Oh, and by the way, they don't need that account anymore because they used it for, if they need to find a different way if it's a business account or whatever, that needs to go away so that someone is accountable for that money, not just this person, because he's proven that he's not ready to be accountable for that kind of situation with free money. By the way, I understand, I want to say to all of you, I know what it's like to be a 50-year-old man and told you're not accountable in some area. It's like, what do you mean I'm not accountable? But we're not, and it just, if we lie, if we're keeping secrets, if we spend money on sex workers, if we, whatever, we have to own and take responsibility. And I want to say this for just a minute. I think we have to take responsibility for what we've done on a much larger scale. And Tammy knows this. When I wrote Out of the Doghouse, I was saying to those of you men who cheat, it's not just about the cheating. It's about the whole nature of your relationship that, you may think as a man, especially, oh, it was just something I did in Vegas and it was a lap dance and it was no big deal. But that spouse is devastated. And they don't just not trust you in the area of sex. They now don't trust your financial spending, where you're spending your time. Do you have another family? When trust is broken, especially in a really painful way, people will go understandably to, well, maybe I don't know anything about you. And I think you really have to expect that as someone who's in recovery, because I know for me and the people I worked with, it was always, well, but I was honest in every area except for this, honey. But for the spouse, for them in their shoes, where they're coming from, they don't know that. They just know that you've been lying, and they don't know how much you've been lying. And so to them, you might be lying about everything. And it's going to take a while, like a year, for them to sort through what they trust in again and what they don't. And it's our job to tolerate that, not sort of say, I'm sort of Tammy speaking to the other side of this, not to say to our spouse, well, why are you bugging me about that? So I wouldn't expect anyone is beating anyone up. If you're asking for honesty and accountability, that's just a rebuilding a relationship.
Agree. Okay. So next question. My wife found out about my infidelity 4 months ago. Unfortunately, I was not initially completely honest about the depth of my betrayal and addiction. I have now told my wife everything, and I'm seeing an individual therapist, a couples therapist, reading books, and attending 12-step meetings. I have been sexually sober based on the SAA definition for 2 months and sexually abstinent for 2 weeks. I know I am very early in my recovery, but are there any signs or things I can look out for so I know when my brain processing begins to change to a more healthy way of thinking?
Why don't you start this, Tammy? Because I think you don't have to be talking about sex addiction to get into some ideas about how do we know that we're making the right decisions and in good recovery.
I was thinking, gosh, early on, it was like everything I did was was not the right. I needed so much outside input. So I love that you're going to the SAA meetings and you're reading all of those things. And if your actions align with the things that you're reading, then you are starting to make better choices. If you are thinking about other people more than yourself, you're starting to make better choices. So early in recovery, well, in our acting out, it's all about me. It's all about, how this, me. So, as soon as I start to understand that there's a bigger world out there, there's other people, my behavior has impact on them. I have choices in my behavior. I can act instead of react. There's so much to learn. So give yourself, you are very early. So I'm thrilled you're here. It's going to take time. It's one of the reasons we talk about seeking integrity intensive, because, when you're going to therapy and you're doing a 50-minute session and you're going once a week, and even if you're going to individual and group therapy every week and stuff, it takes a long time. So one of the beautiful things about coming to a program like Seeking Integrity Intensives is you're compressing that. You're getting through, a whole lot of stuff and getting this great foundation on which to build in a shorter amount of time. So it's have a sponsor, go to therapy, go to individual and group therapy, be, going to meetings, engaging with the online resources here, listening to podcasts, all the more good stuff you're putting in, helping to replace the bad thoughts. I hate to use good and bad, so I won't use judgmental things, but in my acting out, I was focusing on it, doing it, or reliving it. And so I had lots of time. So I had to replace that with things that were recovery minded until I learned, So thoughts, Rob?
I have all these C words that I wrote down, like compassion and community and commitment and clarity. And, first of all, this is a process, not a destination. It is a journey for sure. I am still working on my recovery. Tammy knows that I am still working, not necessarily on, am I going to have sex with a stranger today, but more emotional things and being a better person and trying to be clearer in my intentions and what I want. That's a life journey that healthy people, I think, just kind of know how to negotiate better. So I think you can expect, we have a saying in recovery, the road gets narrower. And I think that's true. The big issues, am I a failure? Am I ever going to be able to stop? Will anyone ever love me? I think those kind of get resolved pretty quickly. But the longer term issues about what kind of human being you are and what do you really value and how can you live by those values? And especially when you're being tested, and the world and life will test all of us. That's the long-term journey. And I would hope that you see it as a gift, because part of this for me, like, I don't get to lie. There are many times when I would like to lie, believe me. But if I lie, it sets me up for my own destruction. And they say, and I kind of always believe this, that this healing journey is kind of selfish in a way. And it is, because even though I'm healing because I want to save my marriage, or I want to be a better dad, or I want to, achieve more in life, or start to date, or whatever it is, ultimately, I'm actually doing this because I want to successfully negotiate relationships and the world in the healthiest way I can. And since I wasn't necessarily given a good roadmap, as many of us weren't, we have to be extra scrupulous about honesty and clarity. And this road demands that. And so I'm kind of grateful, because I can imagine in a different world that I would have been just a shitty person. I mean, I wouldn't have sexually acted out or been an addict, but this experience has actually taught me over many years how to be a better person in most situations, not all. So give yourself a break, be kinder to yourself, understand that and I want to compliment you, even the person who is asking the question, which I never hear from most people. Most people at your stage, I think was it 6 months or 4 months, are complaining. This is the 4 month, well, I'm tired of this, and when is it going to be over? And I said I was sorry, So I would give yourself credit for even asking these right questions. How can I be a better person? You're already on the right road. I will make a personal recommendation. I wrote Out of the Doghouse, a relationship saving guide for men caught cheating, for men who wanted to better understand how to heal infidelity with a female partner. Because I have done this work as a therapist for 25 years, and I know that men just don't particularly have a great time understanding what their women have been through and how to heal it. So I wrote a book for you. If you want to have a better relationship with the road of healing your relationship and what you have to be responsible for, I would give me 12 cents, which is about what I earn on a book, honestly, and the publisher gets the rest. And look at Doghouse, because not only will help you, but your spouse will feel like, I think, oh, he's doing things differently. He's getting what I'm going through. That could, if you want to keep a secret from your spouse, buy out of the Doghouse, read it, don't tell them you read it, and start practicing what's in there and showing your spouse that you get what they're going through, and things will get better.
So the next question, could it be my ex-spouse is involved with his ex-wife in a trauma bond? They could not quit each other for over years. I'm trying to make sense of my healing.
Yeah, I would say that they still loved each other and that they're still feeling there. People aren't just, I know that Pat Carnes sort of popularized that with a book called Trauma Bonds. I don't believe in codependency, so trauma bonds wouldn't really go with that. I think that we do get involved with vulnerable people because we have our own vulnerabilities, and I actually think two vulnerable people together can become stronger together if they're both working on things than they might be as separate. So I don't know that he's trauma bonded with anyone. Listen, I go into an affair because the person turns me on, because it's a fun distraction, because I like having sex with them. I don't go to it seeking trauma repetition. The trauma repetition is in the act of lying to you, splitting his life in half, splitting his loyalties. That's all trauma behavior. But whatever his bond is with this woman, it probably has more to do with affection and sex than anything else. And I think that should make you good and angry. And that might be quite motivating for you, because he's not going there for trauma. He's going there to get laid.
My discovery day was almost 3 years ago for my husband caught in a sex sting, and it took me over a year to find these webinars. I continue to see stings all over the country and wonder why there is no support from law enforcement to point the devastated wives to sources of help. Do you know what I could have done faster and these new wives? That's a fascinating.
So I'm really glad. So I'm just going to make up, I don't know this person from Adam. You don't, we don't know their name, but today, because I do legal work, today Tammy knows I was reviewing a case where I think a guy, I mean, he was looking at underage porn, and I think it's a big problem for him, but you know, what's going to happen to him and what has already happened to his family and his life is just so incredibly devastating. And, you know, this is someone who's never contacted, never touched someone underage, never solicited, never any of that, but looked. And looking has a consequence and has meaning, but our legal ramifications for some behaviors are so vastly different from the reality of what's needed. And in fact, the case that I'm working on right now, I'm probably going to end up going to that state and testifying, because I just don't think this person should go to jail. So first of all, you can spread the word you can spread the word far and wide that we will support you and any spouse who wants free support in the spouses group. And if we get enough spouses who are dealing with legal issues, we'll start a group for spouses who are dealing with legal issues. You know, as long as you guys come there all regularly, we have enough of you. But to you, I would just say that you have a special shame and a special fear, because not only did the person you get involved with do something that hurt you or hurt your family or hurt himself, he might have hurt other people on some level. And, you know, how do you live with it? How do you face that? How do you decide whether you want to be with this person or not? I mean, there's a whole different level of pain for you. And I have great compassion for that also. But I will say, and I think Tammy can back up, that I've met lots of offenders. I've met lots of people with very bad behavior or just moderately bad behavior, and people get better. People get well, not all of them. And I think it's really important for me as a therapist to say I've worked with many offending people and some sex addicts, that they're not going to get better because of who they are or how they're wired. They're just broken. But most of the people we work with get better, and most of the work gets people better. And even consequences like jail and getting in trouble and having your spouse leave, if you're motivated to have a better life, can move people forward. Anyway, Tammy, do you want to add anything? I have a lot of compassion here.
No, I was just trying to figure out how I would ever get the information out to the, you know, to the, I'm going to ponder that. I wrote a note, so I will see what. Well,
this spouse may have some answers, because she might know 5 people and we know some lawyers, and you never know. We could start a little group.
Yeah, I know, but like, how do I tell so I'm thinking.
We'll work on it.
Yes. Okay. After betrayal discovery, I thought the spouse was willing to recover, and I showed him some webinars. I did not want to push him, but after he remembered his deceased mother and felt emotions that were scary. Then I see him head down. Something is visits, and within 10 seconds he was gone. Later on, I found it very disturbing and scary. What happened here? His head down.
Do you want me to take a look and see?
Yeah, I can't. And you just muted. I'm unmuting you. So.
So I have some thoughts about that. I don't know your situation, but the root of addiction is trauma on one level or another. And some of us have different levels of trauma. Most of us don't remember what happened to us, but I can promise you that for most of the people that I've ever worked with in the addictions of all kinds, there's early injuries, some small, some large, that for some of us add up to addiction. So, trauma is a part of the process for everyone. And some people, when they encounter something that's scary or upsetting, they can do something called dissociate, which means they space out, they leave the room, they kind of disappear emotionally or in their own minds physically. And, that can just be a sign that there are deeper issues there for him to work with. And if I were you, I'd recommend that you drop Tammy a note, tammy@seekingintegrity.com. She's glad, I'm sure, to find a therapist or a referral. I think this is a therapy issue. And even if it's insurance based or whatever, because this is more than an addiction issue. If I'm guessing right, it's probably something else that's going on with him emotionally, and it may indeed relate to the addiction. So I think seeing a good therapist and getting good evaluation for both of you would be helpful in this situation.
I love codependence. I could use more information about the following. How do I set boundaries? How do I recognize progress? How do I decide enough is enough?
Oh my
Join
God.
the Codependence webinar on Fridays, on alternating Fridays. Yes.
I'm going to take a break here and tell you that just for those, we've got some people, how many folks are here? We got 21 folks here. So I wrote a book a year ago called Prodependence, and it was a 30-year overdue perhaps, answer to codependency. And it's really my belief, and I believe it because I did my PhD studying this issue, is that codependency has never really been the most useful path or method for spouses and partners and loved ones of addicts. It's too blaming, it's too shaming, it's not strength-based. And ultimately, I don't think it really appeals to what people struggle with in addictive relationships. It's an appealing idea, but I don't really believe in codependency. So I wrote a book about what happens when we love an addict and how that can affect us and what that does to us and how we can get the support and growth to grow past it. And so I'm just saying to everyone else what codependence is. But it is a theory, it's a concept, it's something that's being worked on right now. Tammy, I will know by 6 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Oh, wow.
If the largest international publisher of academic literature is going to take this book. And if they do, then prodependence will be taught in classrooms throughout the world, and it will become another way to look at helping partners and families of addicts other than codependency. I'm very grateful for that. And to your direct question, what I haven't done yet, because that book has not been written yet, is all of the, how do you do it? How do you set boundaries? How do you work on this? How do you work on all the stuff you have to do, which you had to do in codependency too, with all the stuff you have to do to sort of be healthier? What are the actions you need to take in different situations, and how do you best handle them and support yourself? That part is yet to be written. So, but I will say this to you, that boundaries are boundaries. It doesn't matter what perspective you're coming from, and that is what I love about prodependence, is it doesn't abandon anything that codependency said is helpful for partners other than detachment. It supports self-care, it supports meditation and building peer bonds and growing yourself in a variety of ways and getting more independent so that you can deal with the trauma. But it does it all from a perspective of not blaming and shaming you. So I think if you can comb through some of the codependency literature and look for some books on setting boundaries, look for some books on, I think progress is a different question, but, and you will begin to find that. I also think if you drop into the partners group, either for our partners group or any partners group, you will hear mostly spouses complaining, no offense spouses, about the progress that they're not seeing. But once in a while, if you really ask a spouse, they will say, well, I am seeing this or I am seeing that. And So I can't be the best guide to what would be growth in your relationship, but I can tell you there are a lot of other spouses who can help you, and drop into a support group. By all means, they're free.
Well, and I had the opportunity last night to sub in on the betrayed partners, and people actually were talking about progress. They could connect the dots to some of that. I did in the chat.
What did they say, Tammy? I mean, what were some examples? Can you remember? Or
almost like, I want to be careful of what I share. So so I'm going to filter this a lot, but let's say that they saw progress with a person. It almost invokes some fear, because like, what happens if it isn't as real as they hope it is, and things like that. So while they see progress, they're distrustful of
guarded.
some of that as well. Yeah, and as they should be, but they're recognizing, and they are in the drop-in group, they're talking about it and asking for validation of, from the other people. Do you see this as, what do you see with this? So I love that they were doing that. I also put in the chat, I'm putting lots in the chat tonight, but there are previously recorded webinars. There are some great ones on boundaries. John Taylor has done it. Kristen Snowden has done it. Eddie
And you typed in how they can find those?
Yes, there's a link to the previously recorded webinars, where this is live Q&A with Dr. Rob, but the rest of them are educational. They have an educational component where they talk about a topic, and then they answer questions. So we have talked about boundaries, vulnerability, I mean, like all of those things. But Kim Buck, like I said, on alternating, so the first and third week of the month, she on Fridays has a pro-dependence webinar. She lives this stuff in her practice, so she will answer questions directly like that, and has. So some of her webinars are the previously recorded would be great resources, but join as well. So okay, so let's go with the next one. My SA husband has just started treatment. I love him dearly, but he has trouble with true intimacy. Is there something I can do to encourage sharing his feelings when it's too hard for him to do, or I just have to wait until the therapist works his magic and learns how? The love and understanding I give doesn't unlock any of this so far.
Well, I don't know that I don't know, but I hear a little sarcasm in there, and it could just be me. But it's like, do I have to wait for the therapist to get him to move, or, isn't my love enough? I guess I heard a little bit of that in there. And, I want to say to you that no, your love is not enough, but it's not because it isn't. It's not because it wouldn't be enough for anyone. It's just not enough for his brokenness. It's not about your love. It's about his brokenness. You could be Saint, Maria, whatever, and he's still going to struggle, because no matter how much you give and how supportive you are, and how that actually might terrify him. Those of us who are sex addicts often have incest, maternal abuse of various kinds, and I can tell you that the last kind of partner I would ever pick is someone who's incredibly emotionally available, because that's terrifying. I want to pick someone who's a little distant, a little like confused, and I did, and I'm happy with it. So what you consider something to be that anyone would respond to as warm and loving and an invitation in might be the very thing that he can't tolerate. So I think the fact that he's in treatment means that there's a lot of movement is coming. It's coming soon, because nobody comes back from treatment with us or anybody else and is the same. So you're going to see movement. I think it's also important for you to identify what leaves you feeling like a partner's being intimate with you, because it may be things that never occurred to you. For example, you may need your spouse to come home and spend at least 20 minutes talking about his day and asking about yours. Do you have a plan for that? Have you guys worked that out? You may need him to, in other words, it's not enough to say, oh, honey, I'm here for you, and anytime you want to talk. Sometimes you have to say, as your partner, I need to hear from you more often, and what I need to hear is. So that's not pushing the envelope, that's saying what you need. And I think if you keep it in terms of, I need more of this from you, I want more of that, and this is how I would know I was getting it, then you're giving him a concrete path toward meeting your needs. He may have no idea how, and when he does try, he may run into a brick wall, but at least you've given him direction. And I know for me, I have laid out all of the groundwork for my spouse, like, honey, over here, look this way. I've shown him 100 different ways I want things, and it never works out. I actually sometimes have to go, hey, can you do this? And he's like, wait, were you asking me that? Because, sometimes we need to find a different way. And I have to tell you, for those of us who are addicts, sometimes we're a little, what's the word? Disconnected from other people's needs as we are from our own. And so you're reconnecting your spouse to what you need and the way you need it is a gift to both of you. It's not a curse.
So, and I want to share, I shared about the previously recorded webinars. John Taylor has done some really brilliant work on that.
You are so driven.
Sorry, I am, but I love his because they're very practical. But one of the things, he talked about in one of his webinars was, he had a couple and she said, this is what I want from you. I know you can't do that yet, but I wanted to give you this vision because I know you can't do all of this, but I want to give you this vision. I want you to know this is important to me, and I want us to have a plan to work towards that. And I thought, wow, what a great way to do it. You've said what you need. You understand that he can't do that yet, and you're willing to wait, and you could keep checking in on it. And I thought that was super helpful. So anyway, okay, next question. Is there a resource for sex-addicted physicians to get help privately? Also, guidelines for the spouse as far as knowing he is acting out inappropriately at work or feeling the need to alert the medical board. Either way, this will and has destroyed me, and I so appreciate that. What am I supposed to do?
Well, doctors are hard because they think they know everything, and they're taught to believe they know everything. And they're particularly hard on therapists because they look at us like, well, what do you guys know? So doctors are hard in general. They tend to be more narcissistic, more arrogant, more shut down, it's in their training, but it's also in who would be attracted to this role and this training, someone who kind of is like that. So you're married to a doctor. Let's just give it that at the beginning. Tammy is going to type in, I'm absolutely sure, a professional support group that we run every week for free. And it is, if you have a license, like you're an attorney or a therapist or a doctor, and you want to go to a support group that is confidential, we will you will write us a note about the desire to be in that group, and then we will ask what kind of professional you are, and then we can invite the person in. We do this so that we can run a private group for people who might be at risk for losing a license or something like that, and not anyone can drop in. I also think, though, that, and I'm going to be really clear with you, that in my opinion, doctors, PhDs, lawyers, anybody who's had a professional degree is going to need a higher level of care. In other words, maybe that's not the right way of putting it, is going to need a sophisticated therapist to work with them. If you're smart, so I remember, Tammy, you will love this because it's right out of AA literature, I'm sure, or AA somewhere. I worked with a client once, and he was so smart and so successful and so good looking. And I said to him, I am so sorry to tell you that you have three things working against you in your recovery from day one. You're good looking, you're smart, and you think you know things, and you're successful. And all of those things work against you because you can convince yourself that you know better, or you know what's right, and usually you do, but not in this case. What doctors and professionals have a hard time understanding is we're used to being masters of our own universe, whatever that is. Nobody tells us what the final pen stroke is because we're in charge and we know things, but not in this situation. And trying to force the idea that we know things into the recovery process is where the problems begin, because in order to really healthfully recover, you sort of have to be a beginner. There's no other way around it. I would recommend you get a really sophisticated and well-skilled therapist, both for you and him, and maybe for you as a couple. Maybe do a workshop as a couple. I know that we're doing workshops for couples. Others are. Get a good look at each other in a therapeutic environment, because sometimes it's hard to tell how much of a jerk your partner really is until they act it out in front of other people, or are you just being reactive? So all paths lead in the same direction, but some are faster than others. Tammy, you have thoughts?
Well, the professionals group is the same link as the other drop-in groups. People just have to reach out to me and share their license information so that I can verify it's them, and whatever. For you, you are welcome to any of the partner drop-in groups. So there's Sunday night, there's Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time. There's more. So the link that I shared, with all the webinars, etc., any of those that you would find helpful, please join those. As Dr. Rob said, reach out to me. I will help you find the right support. We have treated professionals at the Seeking Integrity Los Angeles treatment program. So happy to talk to you about that as well.
And there are also centers that are specifically for doctors, and sometimes that may be needed if like drugs are involved, or if they're complex physician cases, or if a medical board is already involved. You want there to be a high-level professional, a doctor who's dealing with, I've dealt with the court, the medical board, all that stuff. I'm not saying it has to be me at all. I'm just saying you want really to seek high-level people, because there's a license at stake. And I don't know if he's acted out in his practice or not. I really sincerely hope not. If he has, you should write Tammy a note, because I will even get on the phone with you and talk to you about some of that. If it's going on within the practice, and what that means to me is with anyone he works with in a medical practice, the nurse, the receptionist, or with a patient or a family member of a patient, all of that is really very, very serious, and much more serious in a medical practice. So if that is the case, drop us a note so we can at least advise you properly. Yeah. Oh, can I tell you something, Tammy?
Yeah.
Did you know, I need a break, so I just want to take a moment. Did you know that this is the sky where I live? And did I tell you, I'm just bragging now, that this is unretouched? I took this photo 20 minutes before we started. So this is actually what the sky looked like, I want to say. That's my only, and this is why we pay so much money to live in California, so we can look out and see the sky.
I see the sky. I live in Phoenix, and I go run my dog very early, and sometimes I can see the sunrise and the moon set. It's glorious. So
by the way, I want you guys to know that Tammy went on a 9K run this weekend.
No, it was a 15K, which means it was a 9.3-mile run. So yes, that was.
That's amazing.
So
that is so amazing.
Yeah. So it was. I knew I'd done it, but it was the hot chocolate run, so they give you a whole big thing of chocolate afterwards. So we'll run for chocolate. So
I'd run for chocolate, but I wouldn't get very far. Let's go to our next
9.3 miles. Okay. Sometimes my brain is overloaded and also still on fire from discovering infidelity and abandoning me after, but I am so eager to learn and need it. So I take breaks, but sometimes the learning is too much and I get tormented with thoughts over these two, and he should be back again.
So what was the last part? I didn't hear the last part.
I think it was that he is back with his ex. So she hasn't seen him for 38 days, but he's back with his ex. So it's the tormenting thoughts.
So let me say something about that. I find a lot of people blame themselves for those thoughts, or say, when am I going to get over it? And I think if you properly identify what you're feeling as grief, that you're grieving the loss of an important connection, whatever, like this woman asked earlier, why is he still seeing the affair partner? Is that trauma? No, he's still connected emotionally and sexually to the affair partner. That's why he's seeing her. And you're still emotionally connected to this person, regardless of whatever they've done or whatever's happened. So give yourself the grace to understand that you're grieving the loss of something that was important to you, and forget the nature of it, or right or wrong, good or bad. And that's going to take a while. That's going to take the healthiest person a while. And the best thing you can do is, I have a friend who said she survived breakups with movies. That's one choice. I think by getting a lot of support is another way. So watch your movies with friends. You can Netflix your way through the end of a relationship if you need to. Just don't drink, use, or hurt yourself. It will pass. And I want to remind you and everybody that, and Tammy, you included, it's the holidays. Everybody's feelings are heightened. Everybody's feeling stressed out. Everybody's got a lot going on. And plus, if you're dealing with this stuff, there's trauma. And plus, what do you say to mom? How do you deal with the Christmas dinner, or Hanukkah, whatever it is? There's a lot of stress for families and for performing and showing up and giving and doing it right this time of year. And then there's all the stuff about love and commitment and family and so give yourself a break. It's hard for everybody. It's especially hard if you're grieving the loss of someone you thought was something else, or the actual loss of a connection. It's very hard, especially this time of year.
Next comment, love Prodependence, read it and shared it with Al-Anon members, COSA members, SA members, and AA members. I have heard so much positive feedback about how it releases the shame of helping a person with a disease of addiction. Thank you for writing this book. Thank you for sharing it. We're hearing more and more grassroots level, people getting the word out.
Well, I just want to say to that point, thank you for that. And Tammy sends me around places. Sometimes I don't even know where I'm headed, but recently she sent me to Singapore, and I sat with 18 women in Singapore who were working group therapy around codependence. And 2 weeks before that, she sent me to Australia, which is even further. And guess what? I went to a group of 13 couples who were sitting together. They were all doing codependence work as with their therapist. So yeah, this is going around the world and it's ringing like a bell. And I'm so incredibly grateful because I too had a troubled family. And I too got told, there was something wrong with me for loving my troubled family members or wanting to support them, and I never felt that was right. So I'm incredibly grateful to see all of this happening. Thank you.
I also sent you to Minnesota and you had a similar experience. So, okay.
Oh, in Minnesota. Yes, we have partners in Minnesota.
Yes,
I don't want to leave out the US, but.
I know. Okay. So the next one, my husband finds support, intimacy in church, his therapist, his group, etc. I know this is good. And I read in one of your books to expect this, but when can I expect to engage with him, have him engage with me again?
So I'm not sure what engage means. Do you have, why don't you rewrite this question just for the general audience, Tammy?
To me, it's like he's getting support for all of that. How come he's not connected and supporting with me and me with him? So he's over here doing his thing, getting support that he needs. So any intimacy or connection with me.
Well, I think, again, I wonder how much you're asking. I think a lot of us assume, oh, well, he's doing great and he's doing better. And then he's going to turn to me and give all this love. No. In fact, I would say that addicts often are very outwardly focused in the beginning. We're not, and rightfully so, as you said. I need to get into my support group. I need to go to my group. I need to go to my therapy. I need to make sure I'm stable. But for a lot of spouses, that can feel like, well, you weren't home before and now you're not home now. So what about me? And I think that that balance is the word that comes to mind. In the first 6 months or so, yeah, this person's got to get a lot of support. And it means they're not going to be showing up a whole lot more before than they were. But if they really do that in the first 6 months or so, they can start to scale that back and show up more and more for what you ask him to do. And by the way, I don't think it's necessary, and I want you to hear this. Addicts are not the only arbiters. Can you say that? We're not the only ones to decide what's good for us. You can say, look, I know you want to go to that Saturday night meeting, but I really want to spend a Saturday night with you once in a while. Could you go to a Sunday meeting or a Friday night meeting? And guess what? He or she can. So, just because we are also still addicts. So we will defer to what we want to do and how we want to do it and when we want to do it, even in recovery. But if you say to us what you need and you articulate it in a clear way, and you let us know, hey, let him know, I'm really pleased that you're going to these groups. I'm really proud of you. I'm really impressed. And I have needs I don't feel are being met. Let's talk about that. What could be more intimate than that? And then you get to see how he responds. And that will tell you a lot about where he's at in recovery. We have time for one more quick question. Tammy.
Yes, that we're out of questions. So my question for you was next week is right before Christmas, and I think you're traveling.
I am traveling next week, and I am going to a wedding on Friday night, so I will not be here next week if we don't, on a Tuesday, unless we have somebody else who.
Well, I'm going to find it. So if you watch the calendar of events,
wait a minute,
I will make sure I update it.
That's the 23rd. Yeah, I'm going to be on a plane. I can't be here next week.
I didn't think so, but
I will be here 2 weeks from tonight for sure.
Correct, and I will be as well. And I will post who's going to be subbing for you for next Monday.
Next week.
Yes, but somebody.
And I want you guys to hear that. We show up on holidays. We do our best. And if we can't, we find people because we both understand this is the hardest time of year. When we're busiest in treatment in January, when everybody says, okay, that's over now, you got to go get help. So we understand this is really hard and you're just kind of struggling through it, and give yourselves a break. Go take a hot bath, take a walk, and look at my beautiful sunset.
There you go.
Thanks, Tammy.
Thanks, Dr. Rob.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.